Welcome to Salvage, a podcast for conversations with artists about the repurposed materials they use in their art practice. Welcome to my conversation with Alejandro Duran. Alejandro is an artist who transforms international trash washing ashore on Mexico's Caribbean coast into aesthetic yet unsettling artworks, awakening viewers to the threat of plastic pollution. His long-term project, Washed Up, Transforming a Trashed Landscape, uses photography and installation to explore the complex intersections of humanity and nature, highlighting the pervasive impact of consumer culture on the natural world. Thanks so much. I really, I have to say I was a little nervous asking you. I've been following you on Instagram for quite a while, and I was like, all right, I want to ask this guy. I want to ask this guy to talk to me on this podcast. And then I was nervous. I don't always reach out to everyone because I'm a little bit like, well, they're too busy. I give myself lots of excuses. So when I saw that I was in the same exhibition with you, I was like, all right, well, this is my chance.
Oh, yeah. I'm so grateful. I hope I'm not intimidating in any way. I like to think that I'm down to earth and approachable.
Oh,
So,
no, you totally are. It's all me. It's.
yeah, no, it was great that we were in this exhibition curated by Aurora
Yeah.
Robeson, and it's just such a beautiful exhibition. Got to meet so many amazing artists, including you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
No,
great.
I'm very grateful to Aurora for pulling that amazing exhibition together. I'm afraid that by the time this podcast comes out, the exhibition will be done,
Uh,
but there will be records of it online, I'm quite sure.
yes, for sure.
I'll link to that in the show notes. But so I have many questions about your art practice.
Okay.
But to ease into it, can we start on whether you were an artist as a kid as well?
I wasn't really an artist as a kid. I was just a kid. I had some artistic inclinations. Someone asked me about this recently, like, what was the first artwork that I made? And I remember, I guess the reason I remember it is because my grandmother loved it and had it framed. And it was this painting of, maybe it was even finger paints of these flowers, and one of them was crooked and funky. And so maybe that was my first well, that was the first artwork that I remember because it was framed.
Mhm.
But yeah, I always liked art, but I wasn't the art child, really.
Okay, so you were the run around playing everything child.
So yeah, I was interested in a lot of things,
Yeah.
sports and yeah, just being a kid.
And what did you gravitate towards when you went to school?
Yeah, so I mean, growing up, I was kind of I leaned a little bit more math science in high school.
Oh.
I was good at physics, but I was always interested and had like quirky takes on the literature
Mhm.
and English class. And but it wasn't until I got to college that I really sort of found my artistic streak. And that was in a poetry class that I took. And it was the first class where in my life, I'm already in college now when I'm talking about the first class in my life that the class was and the work and my grades were based on just what I had to say. And it was
Huh.
kind of like, it felt kind of shocking. And it was like, whoa, it's just whatever I have to say. It's not about reading a book and responding to it or responding to other people's work or, a quadratic equation and figuring out puzzles that have right or wrong answers. And my voice was what counted.
Mhm.
And it was kind of an epiphany. And also my teacher encouraged me to read some Spanish language poets, and because I'm half Mexican, half American, and just delving into Spanish. He was like, "Oh, you speak Spanish," and he shared some Pablo Neruda poems with me, and then I was
Mhm.
translating Neruda poems into English, and it just tapped so much into my identity and exploring who I was, and I was hooked on
Huh.
poetry.
That's fascinating. So did you grow up in the States or in Mexico?
Yeah, I was born in Mexico City, and then I moved to the States with my mother when I was very young, when I was 3. And but my father's always lived in Mexico, so I
Uh-huh.
grew up going back and forth. I was lucky enough to be able to travel back and forth very frequently, and
That's
sort of
great.
grew up bicultural, and yeah,
And
so that was
bilingual. Yeah.
bilingual, yes.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So so this was a poetry class in college. And what were you studying in college?
So at that point, I was still figuring it out.
Wow.
But I was a psychology major to start,
Oh,
and
wow.
then I got bored with psychology. It felt like the same questions of is it nature or nurture? And I was like, okay, I'm over this question. It's both. And and literature and poetry had me hooked, and then also photography, and so yeah, it was photography and literature that kind of
Mhm.
had me. So I switched to become an English major, and with a lot of focus on photography and filmmaking as well.
Oh, wow. So did you make films too? Or do you make
Uh,
films now?
I actually, yes, I make a living as a video producer.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't realize that, huh?
Yeah, this garbage art doesn't pay for all the bills, so I like to be able to
Shocking.
maintain my artistic freedom, and I enjoy producing videos as well, working on a documentary about my own project as well.
Oh,
So
cool. And what
yeah,
kind of videos? Like music videos or?
a lot of for education and nonprofits, for schools, for teacher training,
Oh,
um,
cool.
but also promotional videos for a variety of clients.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I come from many backgrounds, but I had a little experience in film and television as a costume designer and a wardrobe supervisor. So I didn't produce any videos, but I was part of that whole thing for a little while.
Okay. Yeah. My partner, that's what she does. So I'm very familiar with that line of work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So when you got out of college, what did you start working on?
So I did an MFA in poetry actually.
Oh, wow.
I did 2 master's degrees. I'm a little overeducated. I did one in teaching. I stuck around to get a teaching degree because I
Ah.
thought I want to be a poet. How am I going to survive? It's not going to be by selling poems on the corner, so or selling chapbooks. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be an educator, and
Mhm.
education runs in my family on my father's side, on the Mexican side, kind of runs deep. My grandmother was a French teacher. My great grandfather was a teacher. There's a school named after him in Mexico City.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't really know about any of this until I sat down with my grandmother. When I'd already started my master's degree, I mean, I knew she was a teacher, but I didn't know the deep roots of education in
Hmm.
my family. And so she told me about that, and it felt like it was in my DNA and my destiny to take this path of
Hmm.
being a teacher. Um, yeah, so I got those degrees, and then I started to teach, and I was teaching in after school programs in New York City, teaching poetry, but then also theater and video production, could kind of teach all of these things. And I was working at different after school programs in the public school system. And then I also worked at the Museum of Modern Art
Oh, cool.
for several years teaching video production to
Hmm.
as well as a couple of adult classes, and also became a museum educator at the International Center of Photography.
Oh,
So
wow.
museum education sort of was a path for me for a little while, and yeah, until I discovered sort of this project, which is what kind of sort of has taken over the last 14 years of my life, and why we got to meet, because I came to this coastline in Mexico and saw
Hmm.
the beach completely covered in trash, and was shocked and confused, and started to see that the garbage was coming from all over the world.
Uh-huh.
So I started to pick things up, and sometimes you can see where something was made, and so far I've documented garbage from 60 different countries on 6 continents, all landing on this coast of Mexico. And
Yeah,
so
I
this was,
saw the map on your website. It's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. It just shows you how small this world is. People say, "Oh, small world," but this really proved it to me
Yeah.
that, I can never know where a product was dropped, but I can tell where it was made. So it made it somehow, whether it
Right.
was a tourist who brought it or whether it was the oceans. And I do believe that the oceans do
Yeah.
bring this garbage around the world and across the world. And so yeah, so I discovered this problem of plastic pollution on the coast of Mexico with the world's trash. And I was just kind of horrified and then quickly sort of started to think, well, how can I make art with this
Mhm.
material? And um, immediately sort of gravitated toward the colorful material
Right.
and made like a quick little sort of arrangement of all this blue stuff because the majority of the plastic of color that I'm finding is blue, and just did
Interesting.
this little arrangement and took a quick test shot, and it was like a lightning bolt hit me. I was like,
Ah,
oh man, there's something here,
right.
and
And you knew what to do. So
yeah.
was this a beach where you discovered this? Was this a beach that you had been going to regularly or just a random beach that happened on that day?
No, so it's a beach south of Tulum, which is a very popular destination for people these days. It's kind of
I've
a
heard of it, retreats and stuff and
retreat
resorts and stuff, right?
and party scene, and there's a lot that goes down in Tulum. It's a very quickly developing city that just opened a brand new international airport. It's like rampant development. But just south of Tulum is this biosphere reserve called Siancan. And so I went down there. I was in the area for a friend's wedding. So
Hmm.
that's why I was there. But I had been to this coastline as a child. So,
Hmm.
and in all of my childhood memories, I don't have any recollection of any plastic, of any garbage.
Hmm.
I didn't go down into Siancan, but I think when we're talking many years before, this wasn't as much of an issue.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so seeing this, in my adulthood shocked me. And yeah, and I thought the project would, I was like, all right, I'm going to do a photo series of installations. That was the initial concept.
And so by installation, do you mean that? So I like judging from what I've seen in your photos, you clean up the beach, you arrange everything by color, you separate everything by color,
Mhm.
and then make an installation of one color or combination of colors.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, so on site, in situ, like on
Hmm.
the same beach where this material is washing up, I'll organize these materials, gather as much of the colorful stuff as possible, and think about, what location, and then create an installation like a sculpture on the beach, and then
Hmm.
photograph it. And so that's how it started, was like a photo series of these sculptural installations in the beach
Hmm.
jungle landscape.
Oh, and how did it evolve into the indoor installations that you do with them now?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. And it was sort of a question that I had for years, because I would gather all this trash and it's backbreaking work, just the amount of material and just all of the work going up and down the coast and gathering this stuff. And then I would create the installation, take the photograph, and then the question was, what do I do with this when I'm done?
Yeah.
And so there were sometimes on and off again over the years, recycling operations that happened in Tulum. So I could bring some stuff to Tulum to recycle it. But then I found that the majority of the material that I was gathering was not recyclable because it was degraded,
Yeah.
exposed to the elements, the sun and the ocean. And if you take that plastic material and put it into a recycling batch, it will contaminate the whole batch and then make the material really of much lower quality.
Hmm.
So recycling wasn't an option, and so I just was like, what do I do with this stuff? And so for a while, I had a hiding spot in the jungle There were a couple different spots because I wasn't gonna like, where I'm doing this project was kind of deep in the jungle. You have to go down these dirt roads, and
Oh,
sometimes they'd be flooded and very difficult to get to, which is what makes the beach harder to clean. It's not like, oh, we'll go to the beach and clean the beach. It's like, no,
right.
you have to commit. You're going an hour or two into on a dirt road where there's
Oh,
no internet service and no services and no restaurants. And there are some hotels, but there are some private properties and stretches with nothing.
uh-huh.
Oh, and the roads can be a mess during the rainy season. They turn into like little lakes, and you don't know if you're going to be able to get your car, through.
Oh,
So
wow.
it just makes it very difficult to have any sort of large scale cleaning operation happen
Mhm.
there. So yeah. So then over the years, it was like, all right, how do I exhibit this in a gallery setting?
So
Like if I,
wait, hold on.
yeah,
I'm curious about the storage. So you would like
oh yeah.
bag these by color and stash them in secret places in the jungle?
Yes, exactly. So I had like a couple spots that I thought they wouldn't be disturbed. They wouldn't people it wouldn't disturb people to see garbage gathered, and they wouldn't disturb, yeah, people's experience of the magical jungle, but that they would stay sort of hidden, and that I could come back and use them for either another installation or figure out, what is the game plan going forward with this material.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And then I met someone a couple years in who um, basically I told them about my project. This woman Anna, who had a property down there,
Mhm.
and she said, I told her that I was storing my precious material in the jungle, and she was like, "If you want to keep it here on my property, you can." And I was like, "Oh, that would be amazing." And now she's like family to me. Like now
Uh-huh.
I stay there. She's been a huge supporter of my project over the years
Oh,
and has
wonderful.
enabled the project to really grow because I go and gather material and I store it on her property. Um,
Wow.
and have these big tarps that kind of cover, I have these big mounds of precious trash that are kind of hidden on her property. And and then, but over the years, I've exhibited in different places. And now I'm in my Brooklyn studio where I have many bags of this material
Hmm.
stored as well. And some of the material is on view at the SVA gallery where we're exhibiting right now.
Right.
So yeah, so it was nice to find a home for the material. It didn't have to be stored in the jungle. There's so many stories. This is a 14-year project. I mean, one quick story is that I came back to look for my garbage that was hidden in one spot, and it was a couple thousand probably PET plastic bottles,
Hmm.
and I arrived like I had been gone for a couple months, and I came back and I was going to fetch my precious trash, and there
Uh-huh.
was somebody at that moment literally pulling out all of my plastic to take it away in a truck.
Oh,
And I think they were trying to recycle it,
oh.
get some money for it. And I had to awkwardly come up and say, "Excuse me, sir, this is my trash." And so
And you
that's
can't recycle it.
yeah, I didn't even get into that, but I was just like, wait a second, this has taken me years to collect. Please. And then I had to I showed him photos on my phone of like my artwork and explaining to him that yeah, it indeed was my trash. So that was a hiding spot that I guess wasn't hidden well enough. So yeah, that's one of many stories over the
That's
years.
so funny. Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then how did you come up with the indoor installation idea?
Yeah. So for years, it was like, all right, how do I exhibit this material in a gallery setting and, bring the jungle with it? Because the main point of my project and the main sort of concept here is that it is the world's trash, but it's infiltrating nature, and it's, becoming one with nature and destroying nature. And
Mhm.
so to have it in a gallery setting without nature just felt like it wasn't doing service to the ideas in the project.
Mhm.
So finally, it dawned on me that a couple of my photographs of the installations would really lend themselves to mixing with the material. So I made it in a couple of these where there's like a river of red trash where the the river sort of ends at the bottom of the frame,
Hmm.
that I could actually bring the actual red trash and make it seem that this red trash was spilling out of the jungle, out of the photograph, and onto the gallery floor. And when that idea clicked, it was like, okay. It it felt like now I know what to do with my material.
Hmm.
And also, you know, it really is fascinating to me, and that these works are they're alive, they're growing. So as I gather more red trash and I install this work in a new location, they are growing. They get
Right.
bigger over
So the
time.
photograph can remain the same, but the river flows more and more.
Exactly. Yes. And yeah, and in each location, depending on the venue, like the river takes on different shapes and forms. So in each venue, now the red one called Vena or Vein has probably been exhibited maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 different times.
Hmm.
So in each location, it's taken on a different form. And that's always interesting because well, yeah, it's just some of my forms have changed, and it's the same photograph, so I have to keep it interesting for myself as well.
Sure, I can understand that. So
Yeah.
then I saw that you document, I couldn't tell if it was all the trash that you collect or just some of the trash that you collect that you document.
Yeah, well, I brought my blue piece called Mar or Sea to Frankfurt a couple of years ago, and before that exhibition, I photographed like each individual piece
Uh-huh.
of blue material. But no, I haven't documented for like every piece
That
in
would
in
be
the
hours and
exhibition.
hours.
Yeah, it would be days and weeks and months. But I could potentially do that. But that one would, because some of these works, like when I glom and coagulate and push together all of the blues together, it looks amazing, but you also lose touch with what each individual piece is.
Mhm.
So photographing each individual piece, I think is important as well because it makes us look and see, what are these objects that we're throwing out that are single use. And so there is this animation I did where it just kind of it spins through. I don't know if you saw it. It's called the Plastic Blues, and it's just a video of like the individual pieces, and they come up on the screen in increasingly faster frame rate, and sort of gives you this overwhelming feeling of all of the plastic that we
Oh,
can see.
wow. I missed that one. I'll have to go back and look for it. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. And then, so I have to ask a technical question. How do you connect all those pieces of plastic in front of the photograph?
So they're not connected. They're all loose.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, I thought, I mean, for some future installation, I thought, oh, I could connect at least the piece that connects to the photograph,
Hmm.
have them like, using an adhesive, glue them together or tie them together, but I find that it's just easy to just place them. So each of those pieces is just placed.
Individually. Wow. And some of these are, I don't know, I think the river is like 20 feet long on some of these, right?
It could be, yeah, it depends on the location. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
So
in the
that
photo,
river, yeah.
go ahead.
No, that river was just exhibited in Geneva at the World Trade Organization
Hmm.
in October. They had a Trade and Environment Week. And for that one, I ended up splashing in some yellows and oranges and had sort of an ombre effect. But that one, yeah, was at least 20 feet sort of coming out from the wall.
Yeah.
So,
So
so
how long does it take to put something like that together?
well, it really depends. Like I can knock something out in a day, but then, for example, at the SVA show, it took a couple days because I also did more detailed sort of placing of pieces and then started to create sort of a mosaic effect in some of the work.
Hmm.
So, you can you can lose yourself in this practice, and like I could spend a month installing a work and with microplastics making tiny
Yeah.
little installations within the installation. It's sort of, you can drive yourself a little nuts and you can kind of keep going and going. But the question is really how much time are people going to spend with this work? And so you have to kind of, what is that phrase? Somebody said, one of the poets said that a work is never completed, it's abandoned.
Oh, yes, I have heard that before. That
Yeah.
kind of makes sense. Yeah. Because sometimes I'll be working on something and be like, I think it's done, but
Right.
I could keep going. I
Right.
don't.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to let go.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the photographs, also I've kind of had this iterative process with the where I would recreate the works, like I'd be frustrated or annoyed with some sort of component, and then I'd, want to go back and recreate the whole installation and photograph it again. So I've done that Red River photograph. I think that was the fourth iteration of that
Oh.
photograph until I finally got it to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm happy with this.
So photographing those installations in nature is probably a challenge of its own because some of that plastic is not heavy and the wind blows and there goes your installation, right?
Yeah, no, there are huge challenges. I mean, just with, like I was saying, it's such an isolated place, and and I ended up teaching myself large format photography to do this project.
Oh,
Like
wow.
I started digitally, and then I couldn't get the prints that I wanted, and so I went old school with like the 4x5 camera where you use a cape and you have
Really?
like, yeah, so that was because I guess I wanted to make my life more difficult because changing film in the middle of the jungle and and then transporting the negative through airport security and stressing out that the machine was going to damage the film that I just spent like a month working on a photograph.
Oh,
Um,
gosh.
and then and then developing the film and then scanning the film and then printing. It's very labor intensive
Wow.
process.
So you
um
print those yourself?
yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I learned to print through this project as well. I learned a lot about color theory and printing, and so yeah, I have a large format printer that I work with.
Uh-huh.
Um, but no, the prints that you saw in the exhibit, the large scale prints, those are now done on fabric. That's a 10 foot. No, wait, that one is actually about an 8 foot print.
Yeah, they're huge.
Uh, yeah, no, those I don't print myself. No,
Okay.
but the photo series, I do print myself. So.
Yeah, fascinating. And they seem so effortless, and yet at the same time, when you really think about it, then you realize, no, nothing effortless about this at all.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, because yeah, I think a lot of people will see my photographs and think and then ask whether I found them like that. They're like, "Oh, did you find that like that, or is that an installation that you created?" And I think I am trying to make it seem that this material has sort of infiltrated nature, but like on its own, like to
Right.
have it feel natural. I think that's one of the way I place the objects. I'm trying to make it seem like that's just
Yeah.
how it is,
You know,
not
you
like,
certainly achieve it, but I mean, it would be pretty amazing if nature would separate the plastic by color for you and make these installations. That would be
right,
really
right.
something.
Yeah. But it's interesting because nature does separate some. It doesn't organize things by color, but it does organize things by material. Like on the beach, sometimes I'll find very like lightweight PET, polyethylene plastic, all like gathered in one area under like brush, and then in another area you'll find tons of bottle caps, and
Oh,
so
interesting.
based
Huh.
on their form and their weight and things, you do sometimes find materials somewhat separated, not like in this
Uh-huh.
super hyper organized way, but
Wow.
yeah.
And yeah, I've never done a beach cleanup, so I've kind of picked up trash along in the beach, but not really a beach cleanup, so I'm no expert. But that's interesting. I guess the weight of the materials, the size of the materials, that's
Yeah,
just how it just does it on its own.
yeah,
So
the way
do
it interacts
you,
with waves in the water. And then
how
if it
often do you do these cleanups?
well, it's varied over the years, and a lot of times it's just me and a friend or a family member, or just waking up in the morning if I'm down there for a stretch and just walking up walking up and down the beach and gathering stuff.
Oh,
Other
okay.
times there have been like larger community-based organized beach cleans where we'll
Ah.
gather, 20 people, 30 people and go clean the beach and then separate stuff. Like I separate out the stuff that I can actually use
Hmm.
and then the other stuff, then it's either some of it maybe is recyclable. And then the third sort of pile would be stuff that would just be taken to landfill.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um,
So,
so yeah, it varies.
yeah. So that brings me to a question. Do you clean the trash that you're keeping in any way?
So I used to, I think when I first started out, I was like, "Well, I got to clean all of this and like I'd take a brush and we'd be scrubbing it. But lately, I haven't, and it's just, I haven't done this like intense cleaning job. So,
Hmm.
like when I shipped the stuff to Geneva, and then I'm opening up the boxes, and pouring out my trash. So a lot of sand will be pouring out and stuff. So there'll be little bits that have sort of made it across the earth as it's traveled. I've
Right.
also accidentally there have been some insects, like a couple spiders that I'm like, oh,
Oops.
you came from Mexico and now you're in, for example, Utah. I remember in Utah there was like a spider that had hitchhiked um
Oh boy.
to Utah. So
What do you do with them then? It's unlikely they'll survive in Utah from
you know,
Mexico.
you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there's an artist that I know who showed me how she cleans her trash when she does beach cleanups, and I I mostly do forest trash because I walk in the forest here and I pick up the trash there. And when I first started seriously picking that up and saving it, I would actually try to clean it. I would put it in a bowl. It's all small things. It's not large things like you're finding, but I would put it in a bowl with some soap. I'll soak it, and then I would take it out and clean it somewhat. And then I thought about it and I was like, I'm wasting water
Hmm,
by cleaning trash.
right,
Is it really worth it?
right.
And then I'm finding, so now that there's some trash that I don't clean, eventually like the earth, the mud will flakes off and it's clean. It's clean
Right.
enough for me
Yeah.
to use in an installation or in something.
Yeah. And there are
Yeah.
also aesthetic decisions, I think, like, do you want your trash to look like shiny and clean or a little stain or a little dirt on it? Maybe that's part of an aesthetic decision.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. So what is the most common trash material that you find on your cleanups?
Yeah, it has to be beverage containers like soda bottles and bottle caps. There's just
Yeah.
so many of those. There are ironically there are a lot of cleaning products, which is just crazy. Or beautification and cleaning products, like a facial cleanser or
Oh, interesting.
makeup or
Huh.
um, or furniture polish, like just things that are you're trying to like clean and beautify
Right.
your body or your world or your home, and they end up obviously doing the opposite of that to nature. But yeah, beverage containers is definitely, I'd say, the number
Yeah,
one.
I would say so. Those clear plastic water bottles, I think
Yes,
they're everywhere
exactly.
because
Yeah,
I guess they disappear so easily. So if you drop one, maybe you can't find it. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that you do cleanup and art projects with kids.
Yes. Well, yeah, as I talked about my education background. So that's,
Natural.
yeah, it's a good fit and I feel like it's part of my responsibility and I really enjoy working with kids. And um yeah, and so I've done a bunch of workshops with kids. Sometimes I'll bring a plastic collection to a classroom and we'll make some artwork. It could be like a day-long workshop.
Mhm.
Um, or a couple years ago, I worked with every class at a school in New Jersey, and we did an outdoor installation. And we did they wanted to make this image of a flower, and got some drone shots from the sky
Oh,
of
cool.
this flower that they created. They ended up using it on their yearbook cover,
Mm,
and yeah, just engaging youth. I think it's hugely important. They get it. They get the reasoning behind it, and they message, and and I've always thought that it's just so important to give voice to youth around these issues. It's not just about me making my artwork, but to engage them with the issue and to give them a voice. It's just um
absolutely.
so important.
Yeah, no, it's more than your artwork when you're using materials like this. It's you're speaking about a much wider problem than just showing a pretty picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of conversation about recycling, and people say, "Oh, recycling doesn't work and it's not worth it," and this and that. I think that, well, a couple points here. One is that I think when people write off recycling as like useless, but then, you take it and you toss it carelessly and then it ends up going into the ocean, it's not, in fact, it has a use. It would be to murder marine life,
Yeah.
So when people write it off and then act like it's not important, well, it's important to make sure that it doesn't end up in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And to sort of bring it back to the youth workshops, like for me, what's exciting about this material that I've gathered over many years is that I can use it to make artwork, but I recycle it in workshops. So I'll bring it to a classroom, and then we're recycling it into new messages, new artwork. And so there's a real sort of component where recycling definitely works.
Yeah. It's
It's
the art of recycling, really.
Yes, yes, exactly. And the recycling of art.
Yes.
So I feel like I found, like, you can't argue with that. You can't, say that it doesn't work because it's clearly working.
Yeah. No, it definitely that's kind of what I try to speak to as well, because the recycling system, at least in this country, is definitely somewhat of a farce. Only 5% of all plastics are actually recycled. Um, but you can recycle many of it through art, because it's a free art material. Whether you use it as it is, like you're using it, or you transform it in some ways to make it unrecognizable, either way, it's an art material.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think people simplify the conversation of whether recycling works or doesn't work. I mean, in certain cities are able to really handle recycling more than others. Like in
Yeah.
New York City, the facility, they separate like they have these amazing machines and technology that separate the glass from the metal from the plastic, and then have these lasers that detect what type of plastic
Pretty
something is,
wild.
like then blow air to separate these plastics into their different sort of types. So not every community has this type of technology to be able to separate and to recycle.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
I highly recommend a visit to your local recycling facility. I've been to the one in is it Sunset Park?
yeah, that's the one
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah, that's
about.
the one. I've been to that one. I actually have an artwork hanging in there. I hope it's
Oh,
still there. It's been a few years.
okay.
And I've been to the one in Westchester as well. And it's fascinating. Like I would highly recommend to anyone to go and see what happens to your trash.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel, yeah, no, it's hugely important, I think, to know when you throw something out where it goes and what happens with it.
Yeah. I don't know who said this, but I don't know, maybe I saw it as a meme or something, but there is no away. So just because you're throwing it in the trash can, doesn't mean it's gone.
Yeah, that's exactly sort of the point that I'm trying to make with some of my works, where you have this garbage that you threw it, quote unquote, away. It ended up in the ocean. It
Mhm.
washed up on the Caribbean coast of Mexico. I picked it up, and now it's spilling back out into the gallery floor right to your feet again, so like that's a way. And
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so
No, that's amazing. Wow.
it's wild. Like, for example, I find it's so random, but like the things that I find, like I talked earlier about the provenance, about where the garbage is coming from, all the different countries. But I found, like, it just always reminds me, I found this fly swatter that's it's like red fly swatter, and it specifically says like it was like an insurance company in the middle of the United States. I forget which
So it
state.
was swag that some insurance company was giving away.
I'm like, wow, what they were marketing their insurance company with a red fly swatter, but how in the heck did it make it from middle America to the Caribbean coast of Mexico? I'm not sure. But anyway.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. It's- you can't, I guess you can't put one of those trackers on something like that because it's after the fact, but that would be fascinating. Somebody should make a film of the path a piece of plastic makes.
Right.
And it could
Yeah.
be your story right there from middle America back to the gallery floor.
Yeah. No, and that's one of the exercises. It's a writing exercise that I like to do with youth, or it could be with adults too. Just like look at this photograph, pick out a piece of plastic that you recognize, and write a story about where it came from, and whose it was, and uh how it made it across the ocean.
Oh, I love that. Is there a book of these stories somewhere?
No, but that's a good idea. I should compile them.
There you go. Happy to give you another project.
Yeah.
Wow. So what is on your schedule, whether teaching or exhibiting in 2025? Because my goodness, I can't, we're almost there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Nothing's set yet, but I did a residency in India this year,
Ooh,
which was amazing. It was definitely just an eye-opening experience, as you would imagine.
where in
And
India?
in New Delhi,
Uh-huh.
and so I was exploring sort of some different project ideas, and I'm not sure that I'm going to go back in 2025, but there's a good possibility to continue a project that I started with flower waste.
What's
So,
flower waste?
well, there's a flower market in New Delhi. It's one of the largest flower markets in the world, and there's all the flowers, the bits that are, the waste that doesn't get sold, that falls off the
Uh,
flowers, or that people. And I started a photo series of the flower waste on the floor of the flower market.
uh-huh.
And it was exciting. I've been working on this plastic project for 14 years, but in my studio I've collect so many other objects and things. And as
Like what?
like I used to have my studio next to a wood shop, so all these wooden chunks of discarded wood. But I've collected my own eggshells for the past probably 15 years. So I have like
Oh,
15
wow.
years of eggshell, my own consumption of eggshells. And in India, I also started to collect some of these lime peels. I could go on and on. There's a lot of stuff. I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I think maybe a lot of artists are.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm looking forward to sharing and exploring these other materials. The plastic project has kept me for so long because it's so meaningful, and because the world needs it and the world wants it, and and it brought me to like meet you and to this exhibition
Mhm.
at SVA right now, and it's taken me around the world. Like it's taken me
Yeah.
to Germany and Japan and India, and I gave a TED talk in 2019 around this project. And
Oh,
so there's just been so much interest in this work, and it's been hard to kind of move on to other things because it's so meaningful and
right.
so, has such an impact. And but I would like to start to wean myself off of it. It's also very toxic material, especially like some of the stuff that I'm finding on the beach. Like I don't know what some of these plastics are made of, or some of the chemicals that it might have like attached themselves to the material.
Oh,
You know,
even the chemicals that they're made from. I mean, there's a
um,
gazillion chemicals that it's made from.
that it's made from and that they carry,
Yeah.
the toxic chemicals that are inside these plastic products. And so over the years, I've gotten much more aware of that, because my fingers started to be visibly sort of damaged, and it's
Oh,
caused,
no.
yeah, with touching so much of it or inhaling some of this off-gassing plastic. I know it's bad for me,
Yeah.
and in
And
small
some of it probably disintegrates in your hands too, and that's microplastics. So
nano.
that's not good either.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just way more aware of how the plastic can get in through our skin or through the air, breathing in microplastics as I'm like, you know, recently so the other new sort of exploration is I started to collage plastic onto the photograph, so on a smaller scale.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was cutting some of the plastic, but it's just you can smell some of it when you cut it with the Dremel or just the fumes and then the microplastics. So I'm trying to be very careful about not inhaling and not touching too much of this material. But yeah, I'm looking forward to working with other materials.
Well, that's cool.
So 2025 will hopefully have some of that.
Well, I look forward to seeing it. That'll be fabulous.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
thank you so much, Alejandro. This was fascinating.
thank you. Thanks for having me on your podcast. And it was so great to meet you during the exhibition. I love your work as well. I mean,
Thank you.
we should have a podcast where you get interviewed and because yeah, your work was really, really fascinating. The detail work and the stitching, I was really drawn to it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I sprinkle my work throughout all of these conversations. So that's all good.
Nice. Okay.
All
Well, thank you
right.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great one.
Well, that was a fascinating and wide-ranging conversation. Thanks so much for being here for it. And please rate and review this podcast so more people can learn about these artists who use repurposed media in their art practice. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. And if you'd like to learn about how I make art with single-use plastic, please go to ecoloop.art to see what kind of a class you can take with me. There are workshops available for guilds, schools, and community centers, and you can take a virtual online workshop at your own pace. Thanks. This podcast was created, produced, and edited by me, Natalia Korover. Theme music by R.C. Gaida. Find out more about me at artbynatalia.com. Find out about my community at repurposercollective.com and about my education initiatives at ecoloop.art. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review and share this podcast with anyone that you think might like it. Thanks so much.